Hello, welcome back to coverage of MXP Tacoma, put on by Laughing Dragon. This is the modern 20K headliner, and we are in the finals. It's been a long road to get here. We've seen a lot of great players, a lot of cool decks, seemingly pretty healthy and diverse, or at least interesting modern format. And now we're down to Matt Shu with four color Omnath and his particularly innovative take on four color Omnath against Bradley Brown with Rakdos Evoke, Rakdos Scam. I'm here with Noah Walker. Noah, are you seeing anything interesting about this matchup or about this way game one is starting out?
Yeah, I mean, if you're Matt Jew, you have to really be happy to see, your Rakdos Evoke opponent in Bradley not having anything too impressive for the first turn. It's not like Ragavan is anything to necessarily, be upset about playing on turn one, but Matt does have some good answers in his deck. If he's able to play a turn two Ren and 6 here, it would just answer it so cleanly. But not having one is a big issue.
Yeah, it's true. Or even if he has to spend a solitude on that, it would be bad. But he does have Leyline Binding, which the advantage of being on the play is being able to use cards like Leyline Binding and Ren and 6 to answer the turn one Ragavan. Whereas this could have been a whole different ball game if Bradley had gotten to go first.
Yeah, I mean, Matt has to be happy just with the fact that he was able to answer the Ragavan at all. And Bradley is not doing anything too impressive for these first couple of turns, which is also playing right into Matt's game plan. It's going to be a little bit of a tough one here for Bradley to decide what to take. Yeah, it's redundant with the fact that there's two Solitudes, but Solitude is one of Matt's best answers for, all of these threats that Bradley has in his deck. So
I just caught a glimpse that Matt
uh
immediately drew a new copy of the One
the
Ring. So
discard
totally
curse.
ideal situation for Matt to just have the game slowing down. He's making his land drops. He picks up the One Ring at the right time. This is exactly how he drew it up.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Bradley, you could hope to have, an Orcish Bowmasters in response to this One Ring, maybe start to build up a little bit of something, but you're not going to be happy when you just saw your opponent's hand pretty recently and you got rid of a copy of the One Ring. Maybe do a little double check. Is that one still in your graveyard? Like, did you accidentally forget about it? Nope, that's a new one.
Yeah, I think this is going to be Matt just running away with the game. Even just on the board, we know that he can drop a fifth land, hardcast Solitude, and start burying Bradley in card advantage. Another thing is just the Rakdos deck doesn't have a lot of come from behind mechanisms. This is more a deck where you're looking to get ahead and stay ahead with that flurry of action in the early turns. But from here, two lands against five, no answer in the deck for an active One Ring. I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, even if Matt didn't have these two copies of Solitude in his hand, this would be a little bit of an uphill battle for Bradley. As is, I completely agree with you, Reed. I don't really see Bradley being able to come back from this. You made a really great point in saying that, this Rakdos Evoke deck is not necessarily built to win these games from behind. There's a reason why it's playing three copies of Feign Death, why it's playing, three Undying Evils. They want to get the game over really, really quickly through these first couple of turns. So yeah, having your four color Omnath opponent make it to five lands, make it to being able to cast Solitudes, you're already in a world of trouble. And on top of that, for Bradley, he did not have anything too great going on. He was really relying on this turn on Ragavan to sort of build him up some sort of advantage.
It's true, yeah. The Ragavan, it it's not very likely to go unanswered when you're on the draw, but that was a huge moment. Like for a second, I thought, all right, if Bradley can connect with this Ragavan, or at least force Matt to 2-for-1 himself with Solitude to answer it, that's going to put him in the driver's seat. But just Leyline Binding, Bradley not having any effective pressure after the Ragavan. And then, of course, the timely One Ring. This is just, yeah, Matt's just basically getting to goldfish.
I really like this tick up of Karn on the One Ring. You know, I would say it's not particularly relevant, but uh, it's not something that you can actually see happen in some matchups, right? Because you could be scared of, you know, you turn your One Ring into a creature and then it gets solituded. So like in something like a mirror match, it's a little bit of a risky play. But you know, against Bradley's deck, Matt doesn't have much to worry about. You know, the One Ring still is indestructible, so turning it into a creature, an effective way to use it as a possible blocker if Bradley has something like, you know, a Ragavan as well as a removal spell. So pretty heads up play there from Matt.
Yeah, do you think there's any world where we see the One Ring attacking, or is it just always better to draw the cards than to deal the 4?
Yeah, I mean, you know, maybe if it's a lethal attack, we'll see the One Ring attacking. I'd say basically every other turn of the game, Matt would probably rather draw a couple cards.
Okay, Blood Moon. You highlighted this as a powerful card in the matchup. Certainly something that Brad has a greater than normal number of copies of, 2 main and then effectively 2 more on the sideboard. But this is not the use of it. This is coming down on turn 7 after your opponent has already drawn so many extra cards off the One Ring. This ain't it.
Yeah, turn 2 Blood Moon, excellent. Turn 7 Blood Moon, a little bit pathetic, you know. Bradley really not having a better option. It feels bad.
And it could have been in a slightly different world a turn 2 Blood Moon if that Ragavan had connected, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, imagine like this game has looked so ridiculously one-sided in favor of Matt, but I'm going to go back and change one thing, which is I'm going to put Bradley on the play. Then that Ragavan comes down. Matt can't leyline binding it on turn 1. The Ragavan connects. Now Bradley has turn 2 Blood Moon on the play before the 4-color player has been able to search for any basic lands, and now the game is just completely different, right? So even though things are looking really bad, I would not necessarily draw the conclusion that every game is going to go this same way, and we could still have a very real competitive finals on our hands.
A really good point, Reed. You know, the game looking so one sided is in big part because Matt got to go first. It allowed him, you know, the luxury to keep a hand that was a little bit on the slower side, but did have a turn 2 removal spell. So yeah, this really is just showcasing how important this new, you know, the play draw rule being implemented is. It really makes it important to try to do your best throughout the Swiss, to try to, you know, secure going first for the first game.
By the way, Matt's final record in this Swiss was 11 wins, 1 loss, and 2 draws. So, having seen how long some of these games can go, not necessarily a huge surprise that he picked up some unintentional draws, but also just want to point out that's a great record. He was the 2nd seed in our tournament, and only one player has been able to successfully beat Matt Shu so far in this tournament. And if things continue on this track, that's going to be the only player who does it. Period.
So right about that, Reed. It's, you know, this game looking very one-sided. Matt's life total is not that high. He has not drawn a single copy of Omnath this game, so he hasn't really been able to, you know, supplement his life total after taking so much damage from these One Rings. So yeah, it's not looking very close right now. But if Matt just bricks for a few more draw steps, Bradley might be able to pull out, like, you know, a sort of miraculous win like we saw earlier. But you know, it is soon going to become insurmountable. You know, the life gain from, you know, one copy of Solitude even just 3 is going to matter a lot. So looks like now we finally did pick up that copy of Omnath, though, which is exactly what Matt was looking for, just to sort of, stem the bleeding a little bit.
Yeah, Bradley's just kind of hanging in there because why not? This is the finals, and maybe there's a world where Matt makes some mistakes and winds up putting his life total too low due to the one ring. We actually saw something similar happen to Bradley in the quarterfinals when he played against Ian's mono black mid range deck. But yeah, this is basically just unless Matt makes some rather severe mistakes, there's no way he's going to leave himself vulnerable.
It's looking very tough to come back.
Ooh, Wormcoil Engine. We have not seen that one yet. But I guess this is the matchup for it, whereas Wormcoil Engine would not really have much purpose in the 4-color mirror.
Yeah, I really like it. It kind of makes the sort of liability feeling of Karn go away a little bit. Yeah, it sucks. It's not ideal to be playing these 4-cost planeswalkers, but playing one that searches up, a really insane card in this matchup, it makes Karn a little better.
Okay, Matt Shu wins the first game. Do you see this as meaningfully changing between game 1 and game 2? We talked about Matt not having very deep sideboard options in terms of cards that could actually come into his deck. What about Bradley?
Yeah, I mean, Bradley has a couple copies of Shieldred here. Not sure if those are going to come in. Obviously, 4 mana is a lot. It's kind of playing more towards, Matt's game, but they are a little bit difficult to answer, surprisingly. Yeah, you look at Matt's list and you see, this typical 4 Leyline Binding. But other than that, Prismatic Ending, not a clean answer for cheap. That's really expensive. And then just these 4 Solitudes. Yeah, he has the Teferi Time Ravelers as well, but if Bradley is able to, get a Shieldred in play and have it stick around, it's going to make it really hard for Matt to kind of go off with the one ring. So I could see something like that being good, but at the same time, I feel like it's more going to be focused around, as you were saying earlier, that game could have gone completely differently if Bradley was on the play, and this game he is. So he's just going to have to do everything that he thinks that he can to maximize his advantage of being on the play. Keep these blood moons in, bring in the third one, try to really, get a Ragavan into a turn 2 blood moon going, or, a grief plus feign death. Being on the play with this Rakdos Evoke deck is when your deck has the most potential to do these broken things, and when you want to maximize that in the way that you present your deck. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Bradley not bring in very many cards, possibly the third Blood Moon. Maybe Magus seems okay. There's more removal spells for it, but it could also be all right. But probably not much else. I don't think this is necessarily a matchup for Shieldred. There's enough answers in Matsu's Shu's deck that, it could get answered.
How do you feel about the removal spells? Terminate, Lightning Bolt, Kolaghan's Command.
Yeah, I mean, none sound particularly great. Terminate has to be the best one just because it cleanly answers Omnath. Lightning Bolt is okay, right? Because you don't want Matt to run away with the game with these delighted halflings, and it's unlikely that he takes them out. So it's an okay answer for some of those, and then also can go at the planeswalkers if need be. But I don't think the removal spells are what's going to be as important in this matchup as having the nut draws with these creatures. Possibly turn 1 double griefing, or relying on these furies to clear out the planeswalkers and the creatures more.
So the card Bradley has agonized over the most is that Pithing Needle. What do you think is going through his head about Pithing Needle? What's the best use of that card?
I mean, you know, taking a quick look over at Matt's list, there are a number of cards you could name, right? You can name the One Ring, you could name Karn the Great Creator, you could name Teferi, and you can name Ren and Six. So it's tough because generally I would expect to see Pithing Needle more from, a slower deck. As I was saying before, Bradley has all of these really important pieces that he needs to piece together for his deck to function really well. And these cards that being on the play, really amplifies. So yeah, Pithing Needle's okay. I don't love it. You probably bring it in anyways, just like as an answer to shut off the One Ring. You don't really want your opponent drawing those cards. You could possibly shut off a Teferi Time Raveler so that they can't bounce your Pithing Needle. But other than that, it doesn't seem too impressive for me in this matchup. When you are playing this Rakdos Evoke deck, you're not really worried about 1-for-1 or just trading your cards like at a reactionary. You want to be really proactive with all your cards. You want to get your griefs going, get cards out of their hand. You want to get your Ragavan going. Force them to have an answer. So I don't love the Pithing Needle, but it seems okay.
Matt's hand is interesting. I can't fully process how good it is because I don't know what the lands are. Looks like, is that basic forest? And then, yeah, if he didn't have a blue source, then he probably can't keep that one. Both players going to go back for a new hand.
Definitely a little hard to tell exactly what was in Matt's hand, but it seemed he thinks it's not good enough to keep.
Players look like they're having a good time. Some banter during the mulligans. I'm sure they're. Well, I like to think that both players will be satisfied with their performance. Win or lose, they notched their RC invite. They got a pretty hefty payday. And really, they've just had a great weekend. I mean, beating out 260 some players to make it this far.
Yeah, I mean, totally, Reed. It's so hard to be upset, making it into the finals of any tournament that you play in. Especially as a competitor, when you come in, that's what you're looking for, making it as far as you possibly can. It's really great to see them, not just both being competitors, but being so friendly with each other and just really enjoying the moment, being like, hey, like, we both made it here. Like, let's have some fun while we do it.
So with 6 cards, I'm seeing Bradley has 3 lands, Grief, and another black card. I could not catch if it was a Feign Death or an Undying Malice. That's certainly what he wants it to be. And he
I think it is.
Okay, so that's a great start for him, especially on the play. Especially against an opponent who's mulligan down to 5. Interestingly, Brad decided to keep all 3 lands and bury the Fury, which I think that's pretty thoughtful. Not necessarily obvious, but I think it's a good play.
Certainly an interesting one because, when you look at the way that Bradley's deck is constructed, there's not too many cards that you're going to want to play that cost more than 3. So, keeping 3 lands in your hand is very safe. But, if he ends up drawing another land and then this grief is answered after the turn 1 explosion, he could have a really hard time clawing back into it because he opted to not keep any other spells.
So Matt has multi 5. Let's say for the sake of argument, he keeps 3 lands and 2 spells. He's going to lose both of them on, before he gets a turn. So what is going to have to happen for Matt to get back into this game? What does he have to find off the top of his library?
Yeah, I mean, answering grief as a 4-3, not exactly trivial. He does have these couple copies of Lightning Bolt. He does have a Prismatic Ending, but he's really going to be looking at these 4 copies of Leyline Binding as his biggest answer, right? It seems as though the mana base in his hand, he should be able to fetch up one Triome, and then have at least 4 different colors of mana by turn 2, probably close to 5. So it'll be really easy for him to cast this Leyline Binding. The real question is, can he find it? And once he's found an answer for this grief, whether it be Leyline Binding, Teferi, or Lightning Bolt, after that point, it's not that he's out of the water, but basically the toughest part of the game is over. If you don't just immediately get overrun, you're doing okay.
Wow, look at this. So Matt actually just solitudes the grief. So he identified that he was gonna lose both his cards anyway, and he doesn't even wait to see the Feigned Death, the Undying Evil. Man, so I really give a lot of credit to Matt in terms of choosing to make that play and also foreseeing that in the cards he put on the bottom with the mulligan. I saw that at first he was like, okay, I'm going to keep, this preordain and just keep a normal mix of lands and spells. But he very intentionally kept Solitude White card in order to play around exactly what Bradley ended up having, which was a hand very, very dependent on scamming grief.
I'd say really masterful play there from Matt, realizing the importance in this matchup. Like, how can I possibly lose? He decided one way that he could possibly lose was to, a turn 1 double grief, and kept his hand accordingly. So you saw by how fast he slammed that Solitude that's exactly what he was planning on doing, right? He didn't keep this hand and think, oh, if my opponent has the grief, am I going to Solitude? No. Matt had a plan. He said, Bradley, if you have a grief, I do not want to deal with it at all. I don't want you possibly bringing it back into play. I'm just going to 2-for-1 myself, make sure that I have time to develop my board state. It's not like he has necessarily planeswalkers in play or anything to help his board state in that way. But when you're playing a list like Matt's 4-color Omnath deck, these lands are just as important. Being able to play a land every single turn is just going to help facilitate your game plan more than anything.
So here's Blood Moon, but Matt is pretty well prepared. He gets to fetch 2 basic lands, Island Forest, in response, and then he's got a 4-mana colorless card to deploy next turn anyway.
Yeah, I mean, here we're really seeing the power of Karn. Normally there would be just a ton of cards in these 4-color Omnath decks that you wouldn't be able to cast through a Resolved Blood Moon. But Matt's list is a little different. He's able to play this Karn here, fetch up maybe a copy of the One Ring, maybe something else. Ooh, I like that Matt's thinking here, though. I don't love putting One Ring in your hand when your opponent could possibly have a discard spell for it. Maybe we'll minus, put something else in hand. Maybe we'll just plus for now. At the very least, it's worth considering.
Yeah, I agree. So what could go wrong if he did choose to plus the Karn? Is there any way Brad kills a 6 loyalty planeswalker?
Let's look at Brad's list. I don't think there is. I think that might be the safest play he could make. No copies of Dreadbore, nothing. Yeah, nothing. But also, minusing and just getting something like Haywire Might, I don't mind that play either. That's something that is going to be really effective in this matchup. It's just really looking sad here for Bradley, honestly.
Tiny bit late on the Fury.
Yeah, I mean, especially with this Haywire Might, Matt being able to play Haywire Might pass the turn, block your Fury, exile your Blood Moon, and gain some life. Like, that is just such a backbreaking sequence here that I'm not sure that Bradley can make it out.
I really give a lot of credit to Matt Shu here. There are times when you participate in or watch a tournament and you're like, all right, this person kind of just nailed it. You know, they had the deck that was ahead of the curve, had new technology that other people weren't thinking of. They knew their plan for every matchup. They executed well. They even made some sort of next level plays, like what Matt did with his mulligan decisions and the turn one solitude. And yeah, I mean, I think this was just Matt's weekend. Every time we saw him on camera, I was very, very impressed. I think his deck list is going to be a major player in future modern events, and I think he just has found a really, really good way to use powerful cards, new and old, most notably the One Ring and Preordain.
I mean, really well said, Breed. I completely agree with you. Every time that we've been lucky enough to watch Matt here on coverage, he's been making some really high level plays. Like, hey, honestly, you're telling me I'm mulliganing to 5, and I'm keeping this solitude and a white card to pitch on turn 1 to get rid of my opponent's grief when I don't even know that they have the undying effect. That is just some heads up next level playing that I honestly am not even sure I would have done myself. So huge kudos to Matt for making these tough decisions and then clearly paying off really well for him.
Matt is going to lead off with Teferi because that simplifies the decision, makes sure that there's no Orcish Bowmasters coming as a surprise. Matt's going to go ahead and kill off everything Bradley has before probably drawing more cards off of the One Ring.
You missed off the Teferi, just kind of getting that straightened out. He's like, wait, you have so many cards, like, but you need one more.
Probably the best card Bradley can play is a Fury, but there's nothing he can do against this One Ring that's just totally dominating the game. The only thing he could maybe think about at this point is trying to put the squeeze on Matt in terms of his life total and the burden counters. But that's unlikely to work because the Omnath deck has both a healthy amount of life gain, Omnath Solitude, and it has many, many ways to remove its own One Ring in the form of Legend Rule or Teferi, even Leyline Binding in an emergency.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the deck it's really proving itself to be super resilient. I was doubting Matt's list in this sort of matchup in comparison to maybe your more typical on math deck, but the Karns even proving to be solid. I wouldn't say these two games were the best possible demonstration of what this Rakdos Evoke deck could do, just because Matt was so quick to having the right answers when he needed them. So it's hard to say if Matt's version of 4-color Omnath is more favored against Rakdos Evoke than these other decks, but it's easy to say that he's been piloting his deck so exceptionally well, picking his spots with his removal spells when he needs to be, that any matchup he has a shot in.
So what happened in both of these games? In the early turns, Bradley tore apart Matt's hand, left him with, effectively no proactive plays that he could make. And then Matt drew out of it, which when I phrase it like that, it sounds like a lucky thing, but in reality, that's just the strength that Omnath has in the matchup. It makes its land drops. It's so dense in powerful top decks that create, velocity, that draw more cards. And that's Matt Shute defeating Bradley Brown pretty convincingly. His deck really performed well for him in this finals match, and leading up to it. Congratulations to Matt. That was really, really fun to watch, and I'm quite impressed with his performance over the course of the whole weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you, Reed. Matthew, super well executed. I've been singing his praise, since I saw him down game one of a 4-color Omnath mirror match, and I was still convinced that it would be hard for him to possibly lose the match. So him really showing that he showed up to this tournament to game. He showed up with a very good plan for all of his matchups, and it showed. And congratulations to our champion.
Yeah, huge congratulations to Matt Shu for taking down the trophy. Congratulations to our top 4 players who locked in their invitation to the United States Regional Championship. Congratulations to all our day 2 competitors, everyone who played on camera. Noah, man, I want to say thank you to you. It was really, really fun casting with you. Then we also had Brad Rutherford, of course, Rakdos, everybody else who made this possible with their behind the scenes work, and Laughing Dragon to running a great event.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you too, Reed. It's been such a fun time being able to cover these awesome matches of Modern. And honestly, I'm super excited to see the one deck of the top 8 featuring Preordain to just take down the whole thing.
Yeah.
A really good send off to, oh yeah, first weekend of Unbanned. How much could it really change the format? Well, it's looking like one of the top dogs just got a new toy to play with.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Modern's interesting. There's a lot to parse and a lot of different directions you could go if you are looking for a deck to play in Modern right now. So hopefully this weekend gave you a little taste of what's possible. So I think we're going to send it over to Honorog. He's going to do a sign off. Make sure to give him a shout out, give him a follow, or support him in whatever way fits best for you, because he's going to continue working hard. Continue bringing you great coverage and keeping competitive MTG alive in his own way. So thanks, Honorog, and over to you.